ultimately for me, what's most important is that the players are looking at us and saying, our coaching staff really cares about our success. I think that for me, this is something that I've really learned that I hope people can kind of take away. It's that we're doing our absolute best to do things our way, step by step, day by day.
All right, 1, 2, 3,
GGS!
Hey everyone, I'm David Flander, General Manager of Golden Guardians. Today I'm joined by Jimmy Harrison and Nicholas Smith, our LCS coaching staff. I want to explain and talk through some of the changes we explored this split on the coaching staff side. So as of around week 3, we made a pretty aggressive change in our coaching staff. We promoted Jimmy up to head coach, and Nick took over the prior responsibilities he was working under as two-way player coach.
Once Jimmy came in, we actually realized a lot of the stuff that I and the rest of the coaching staff and Dana wanted to build out in terms of team culture was stuff that Jimmy was all aligned with, which is one of the reasons we hired him overall. But he was doing really great on that, and I found myself referencing and leaning on him a lot with those types of things. And by the time we came in for week 2 of LCS, we obviously started 0-4 at that point. There were a lot of things that were going not necessarily wrong, but weren't transitioning to what we wanted. So I actually brought this up as like, I think we're using our strengths not very well. And this is something I think that as a team, and especially from my end, like we should improve on. And we should change around and use our strengths rather than trying to force it just so I can say I'm head coach and have that, or he can be two-way player coach and do this.
So for me, the change, it felt really natural, and luckily for me, I have a really great support staff as far as Nick and Dana and the players who said, okay, so what do you have to say? Let's do it. And of course, when we have results afterwards, making a pretty great run, it feels good in hindsight.
So from the outside, not a lot of shift with regards to perspective. I think we're seeing the same two people on stage we have from weeks 1 and 2 and then through 3 to 9. But there is a big question of what does Pick Band look like now? Like has that been altered? Like it's still the same two people up there, Nick's doing handshakes. Like what's actually happening? What's that relationship look like on stage?
Sure. So conceptually, the idea of having 2 coaches on stage is something that I hadn't had experience with. My experience in CWL and the North American Challenger scene was just 1 coach and the players. Being able to lean on someone on stage is incredibly helpful. My approach to how I like doing Pick Ban, all of it comes down to the preparation before, where I have gone through all of these scenarios to the point where I'm confident that I know what the enemy's going to ban and what they're going to pick. Having someone like Nick, who has a ton of experience in being flexible on stage, really understanding the players individually, being able to lean on you as far as, hey, remember this scenario, or if we do this, you have 2 outcomes that can happen, and then I can kind of hone in and say, this is exactly what I want. Always knowing I have someone on stage where I can say, hey, I want to do this, and Nick is going to be able to make sure that I can get from point A to point B flawlessly. So much of that just comes down to our relationship and how we talk about the game, how we think Pick Ban should go, all the scenarios that could happen. I think that we can always get better at this. I would make the assumption that other teams are kind of dealing with the same thing as far as how do you want the flow of communication to work on stage. But I think from where we started in the very beginning to where we are now, we've just become better and better at doing this.
Yeah, I'll definitely say the start. Us on stage to start, okay, a little confusing overall. It started off trying to have like 2 ideas at the same time. But we're definitely good now. It's a very easy system. Jimmy basically sets up the idea of again, like from practice, we're setting up a team identity we want. Going into the week, we're building out how we kind of want to play. Jimmy sets up, he knows what we want. We go through all the scenarios. I basically am really good at pointing out what I think could go wrong picking a certain way, and what opportunities it opens up to the other team, and basically what scenarios would be bad. I'm essentially like the doomsayer and everything that happens. I'm like, Jimmy, if you do this, if I'm a good team, I'll pick these things and you cannot play the game. And it's not possible for you. Kind of carries over into Pick and Ban on stage as well. You generally have the core idea of what we figure out, what us as a team figure out, and what we want. And we know our core identity going in and everyone feels comfortable. And then on stage, I'll do a lot of the adaptation, telling you what I think. Like, okay, they did this, that means they're looking for this, or they responded this way, our plan changes now, like we have to do something different. So that way Jimmy can think more about what he wants as like our whole for the team comp to look like. And I can focus on the small, like minute changes that happen just because the team did something different and threw a curveball at us.
We also have a button that we can push where we just can insta-lock a Nibia for Frog and it makes draft really easy.
Yeah, give me Karthus, give me Draven Thresh, it all looks good here.
Easy.
Any of those are fine.
And then with this culture change that we're seeing, what progress are you able to make? Like, is it more accessible to like talk to players on their issues, like make individual progress? And then how has that maybe impacted our player development?
Well, I mean, everyone's more open to talking with each other. It's less of a like feeling like people are getting targeted with things because everyone's a bit more open than feeling that they're more friendly with each other. Like having a good team culture leads to being more open and friendly, and that's like the perfect environment to have to develop in. You can be very like straightforward with your teammate, like, hey man, you suck at this. Like this is something you're not very good at, and rather than being like mad in return, like I can't believe you said this. Like what is happening? It's a lot easier to have those like pointed discussions and get to the point fast rather than having to beat around the bush and hope that you can say things nicely. Everyone's able to talk to each other as a team and just get to what they need. And yeah, when you're trying to develop players, it's the easiest thing in the world when every discussion is in a fight, pretty much, you know? And that's one of the things that's been super good with what we have. But everyone's able to just talk, just have these great conversations and get to the points they need to improve.
I think another point too, it's just leaning on the experiences that the players had. So when you look at a player like Kevin and his track record on TSM, or Henrik being at the top of mid laners for years, or looking at our rookies, they all have different perspectives of the game and what they think is important. And in the beginning, when you have a bunch of new players together, I think they did a good job showing respect, but they didn't want to step on anyone's toes. And now it's so much easier for us to leverage their past strengths, and they're willing to talk about it to say, hey, this is how things used to work this past season, or things that I've learned before that we can apply to whatever we're working on with our team now. It's so much easier for players just to give their input on how the team can help them improve and how they can help their teammates improve. I think this is a big shift that's happened from the start to where we are now as far as just being comfortable with each other.
Yeah, I mean, they're all very open about their past, like positive and negative experiences and how that shaped them as a player to where they are today, pretty much.
So much of it is about, hey, did this team win draft or lose draft? When in reality, so much of what's happening inside the game, it doesn't actually even matter about the champions that you're playing or if you were playing an early or late game composition. It comes down to the synergy between the players, how they're talking to each other, and how they're trying to accomplish things together as opposed to looking at individual plays. This, without a doubt, is showing up throughout our playoff run as far as qualifying compared to when we started. And I think you contribute a lot of that to culture because being able to speak comfortably inside the game, it's going to give you a leg up on so many other teams that maybe have communication issues or they're dealing with similar things with having new players that haven't played together before. A lot of the results that you are seeing, in my mind, are directly related to our players get along really well outside and inside of the game. So they play together as a team, and that's going to transition to wins. Ultimately, for me, what's most important is that the players are looking at us and saying, our coaching staff really cares about our success.